All right, coming in at number 10. Shout out to the Pac-12. Pac-12 very well represented in my first top 25. The Washington Huskies, another success story out of the blue from last year. Kalen DeBoer becoming one of the hottest head coaching names in all of football. But they returned 14 starters from last year's team that went 11-2, including, and this is a theme, including a Heisman list QB in Michael Penix Jr. Washington is going to have one of the best offenses in football next year, period. Again, when it comes to Washington, Utah, UCLA, Oregon, and Southern Cal, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, any one of these teams is capable of winning the Pac-12 this year. These teams are also capable of going 8-4 or 9-3 because the majority of them are going to play each other. Now, there's no divisions in the Pac-12 anymore, which means you could end up having to play the second best team in the league twice if you play them in the regular season and then got to play them again. There's going to be some great quarterback play in the Pac-12 this year, and none better than Michael Penix with the Kalen DeBoer offense at Washington. It's going to be a show up there in Washington this year. I've got them in my top 10 in the preseason. It's got to be the highest I've ever had Washington ranked in the preseason. But again, you talk about teams like Tennessee, Notre Dame, Clemson, Wisconsin, Texas. These are all teams that could finish in the top 10. I've got teams in my top 10 that could finish ranked 20th or to 25th. Washington could lose to teams like Oregon, Southern Cal, UCLA, and Utah, finish 8-4 and be ranked 24th at the end of the year. Or they could beat them all and be ranked 4. It's very hard to figure out some of these Pac-12 teams that I think are very similar and all have elite quarterback play. But I've got Washington at number 10. Sticking to the Pac-12. Another team with a Heisman list returning quarterback for 2023. Love him, hate him. Bo Nix in Oregon. Dan Lanning, year 2. Remarkable season for Dan Lanning at Oregon last year, especially when you consider the way it started. You're talking about a guy that's never been a head coach before. The first game ever, he's got to travel from the West Coast all the way to Atlanta, Georgia, to take on the best team in the country, Georgia, and they get absolutely embarrassed. I mean, it was one of the worst beatdowns involving two top 10 teams that anyone has ever seen. 49-3. I think the final score ended up being first-year head coach for Bo Nix, the quarterback at Oregon. That was his 4th loss to Georgia because he lost 3 years in a row as the starting quarterback for Auburn. It would have been real easy for Oregon to sort of tuck it in at that point and kind of cash the season in and just say, well, it's the first year. We're just going to sort of set the building blocks here. That's not what they did. They went on a tear. They beat everybody they played. They started scoring 40 and 50 points a game. Bo Nix started getting Heisman talk midway through late in the season. He had an injury that kind of derailed that in November. But Bo Nix had by far the best season in his career, throwing and running. He's back. Again, the theme in the Pac-12, Bo Nix back at Oregon, Heisman list. Michael Penix Jr. back at Washington, Heisman list. We're about to talk about Southern Cal. Caleb Williams actually won the damn Heisman last year, and he's back. You're going to have Cam Rising, maybe not on the Heisman list, but kind of a Max Duggan type. If Utah goes 12-0 by some miracle, Cam Rising's going to be in the Heisman discussion. A lot of returning, really good quarterbacks in the Pac-12 is going to make for an interesting season. But I've got Oregon coming in at number 9. They returned 11 starters off of last year, so they got to replace a lot of pieces. Noah Sewell, is that his name? I think it is, Noah Sewell. He's gone. Got to replace him, and that's not going to be easy to do. Number 8, I've seen this team ranked in people's top 4. Stop the insanity. And look, I'm high on this team. And if you've really been following Uncle Lou for a while, yes, I have ragged this team at times. But it's only been because they deserved it. It's not something I've enjoyed doing. If you know the Uncle Lou story and how I became attached to college football 30 years ago, I don't hate this team, and it makes me happy to see this team do well. And they did well last year, and all indications are they're going to do well again this year. Having them in the top 4, though, is borderline insane. I've got them at number, 8? Florida State. Florida State had a great year last year. Beat LSU, who ended up being the best team in the SEC West, right? And they won double-digit games for the first time since anybody can remember. They bring back 16 starters. They went 10-3, and they added a ton through the transfer portal. I think they have a top 5 portal class for this year. Jordan Travis comes back. We talked about all the QBs in the Pac-12. Jordan Travis, the best returning quarterback in the ACC, he's on everybody's Heisman list. Florida State is set up to have a really, really good season in 2023. I don't think it's fair, though, to place playoff or top 4 expectations on Florida State at this point in the preseason. I just think that's pressure they don't need. Let's not forget, as good as a year as Florida State had, okay, let's talk about their best wins. Clearly LSU. Okay, tell me their next best win after that. I'll wait. A 6-win Oklahoma in the bowl game? Their 3 losses came 3 weeks in a row to the 3 best teams they played. Clemson, Wake Forest, and NC State. You can forgive the Clemson loss. Florida State should have beat NC State and Wake Forest, and they didn't. That's the hump they have to get over now, right? I'm not saying necessarily beating Wake Forest or NC State. What I mean is they've got to get over, they've got to be able to beat the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th best team in the ACC. Don't you think? Before we lump playoff expectations on them. Again, this isn't a team that just had one down year. Florida State's been circling the drain since Jimbo Fisher left in 2014. I mean, they won the national title in 2013 with Jameis Winston. They made the playoffs in 2014, the first year we ever had the playoffs with Jameis Winston. Got eliminated in the first round. And they've pretty much been irrelevant since then. This isn't a team that's, been in the playoff conversation year in and year out. I don't understand having them in the top 4. That doesn't mean they can't finish there. We're talking about where should they be ranked today. This isn't a prediction. My top 25 rankings are not predictions of what will happen at the end of the year. We're trying to decide where these teams should be ranked at this point in the offseason after signing day. We haven't seen spring practices. There's a whole nother transfer portal season at the end of April and beginning of May where these teams might lose players. These teams might add players. We're trying to figure out where these teams should be placed now. Florida State had the best year they've had in a long time. They went 10-3. They beat Oklahoma in the bowl game. It was a really good year. And they've got a lot of great pieces coming back and a lot of reasons to be excited. And I wouldn't be surprised if you've got some people picking Florida State to win the ACC. Hell, they're my highest ranked ACC team. I'm going to have Florida State fans. They're going to tell, look, we got Florida State at 8 because he just hates Florida State. You haven't been following Uncle Lou every day like you're supposed to. If you think I just hate Florida State and you're borderline retarded. And get that white boy off that fucking horse. I'm tired of demanding that. I doubt you'll win a national title again until you get that white boy off that. Get a real Indian. There are plenty of Indians in Florida. Find one. Put him up on that show pony. He's just white boy dressed up with Indian paint coming out on a show pony throwing a flaming toothpick in the ground. Get a real Indian, okay? And then we can talk about putting you in the top 4. But until then, probably not. What is this? Oh, number 7. Yeah, number 7. Speaking of ceilings, Southern Cal has hit theirs. Sort of. Here you go, Southern Cal. Lincoln Riley. You get what you get. Maya Angelou, right? If someone shows you who they are, believe them. I believe you, Lincoln Riley. I believe you. Oklahoma fans believe you. The entire college football world believes you, except Southern Cal fans. They still don't believe you, Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley is going to give you a Heisman caliber QB, a top 10 offense, and a defense that doesn't exist. Every single year, year in and year out. Now, Southern Cal fans are going to come on and say, well, it was just his first year. The defense can get better next year. No, it can't. And it's not. Ever. He kept Alex Grinch. He never should have brought Alex Grinch. He brought Alex Grinch from Oklahoma. All Oklahoma did was field the worst defense in the country every single year Lincoln Riley was there. He leaves Oklahoma, goes to Southern Cal, brings the defensive coordinator from Oklahoma with him. And then what happened last year? Heisman caliber quarterback, top 10 offense, defense that couldn't stop a nosebleed. That Tulane game was the most embarrassing defensive performance I've seen since every Oklahoma game I ever saw Lincoln Riley be the head coach of. There is absolutely no evidence, no reason at all to expect anything from a Southern Cal Lincoln Riley defense other than what you got this past season, which is a terrible fucking defense. When we talked about TCU earlier, I talked about things that just aren't generally repeatable. A season full of miraculous second half comebacks is generally not repeatable. You know what else isn't repeatable? Having the worst defense in the country, but somehow leading the country in turnover margin. That ain't happening again. If it wouldn't have been for that one stat, Southern Cal had the best turnover margin in the country. They created more turnovers than anyone else defensively. Other than that, though, their defense was absolutely horrific. I mean, out of position, can't tackle, bad scheme, no talent. But they led the country in turnovers on defense. That's not repeatable. Without leading the country in turnovers, Southern Cal never makes it to the Pac-12 title game. Never mind loses the Pac-12 title game because why? Can't tackle. They never make it there. They would have lost 2 or 3 more games in the regular season had it not been for that one stat. That is just insane turnover margin that they had. That is not repeatable year over year. It's just not. It's just not. I don't understand how any Southern Cal fan can with a straight face can say that they are confident that Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley are going to get Southern Cal's defense into a position this year where they can compete for a national title. I don't understand how you can say that with a straight face. If you do, you didn't start watching college football until yesterday. We have seen this at Oklahoma year after year after year. We're seeing it now at Southern Cal, and I just don't know of any evidence to point to that tells me it's not going to be the same recycled pile of poop defensively that I've seen from Lincoln Riley every single year. I'm not moving Southern Cal any higher than where they're at right now, which is number 7. Until they make the playoffs. That's it. I don't care how many teams ahead of them lose in my ranking. I'll move Florida State ahead or Oregon ahead and some other team behind. Southern Cal's got a ceiling of 7 for me until they play defense or win a playoff game. Period. It's that damn simple. Number 6, speaking of simple, talk about a fan base that's full of Simple Simon motherfuckers. Ohio State, the Sucknut Man. Let's put them there at number 6. There's a theme with some of the best programs in the country. And when I say best programs, I mean teams that almost without doing any research at all, you could just pencil them into the top 5 or 6 every year. To me, those are like the best programs. You're talking, generally speaking. Again, this isn't every year. This is most years, right? Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Clemson. Used to be Oklahoma. Not anymore. Anyway, you get the idea, right? There's a theme with a lot of those teams this year. Replacing quarterbacks. Pac-12, full of returning QBs, right? Ohio State, replacing a quarterback. Alabama, replacing a quarterback. Georgia, replacing a quarterback. Who's got quarterbacks coming back? Almost everybody in the Pac-12. And Michigan, which is why Ohio State is where they're at and Michigan's where they're at on this list. Now, some teams are more dependent on quarterback play than others. Of those teams we just talked about, which offenses would you consider to be quarterback dependent? Ohio State, very quarterback dependent offense. Alabama, very quarterback dependent offense. They're both replacing their Heisman caliber QBs, okay? That leaves question marks for Ohio State. They also lose Jackson Smith and the Jigba. He's off to the NFL. Coming back, Travion Anderson, the running back. Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver, if he can stay awake. He has a problem going to sleep during games, is what I heard. Anyway, they got a lot coming back. But Ohio State's offense is very dependent on quarterback play. So I have that as a question mark for Ohio State, at least until I see that quarterback play. I know people tell me about Kyle McCord. Well, he was Marvin Harrison's high school quarterback. Okay, great. And look, it seems like no matter who Ohio State puts in at quarterback, they give you 4,000 or 5,000 yards a year. So I don't really have a reason to doubt that that'll happen again. But you're talking about C.J. Stroud, a guy that was a Heisman finalist 2 years in a row. You're losing him to whoever starts is going to be somebody that's never started before, whether it's Kyle McCord or someone else. So reason to have at least some speculation about Ohio State. You've also got the fact that they've got not only beat but embarrassed 2 years in a row by Michigan, who I have higher on this list because they return a lot, as does Ohio State. But Michigan returns a lot, including their quarterback. And they play in Michigan this year. And Ohio State's just soft as fuck. And Ryan Day, instead of worrying about getting better and focusing on next season, which is what he should be doing, no, he's still crying about Marvin Harrison Jr.'s naps that he took in the Peach Bowl. Ohio State, I've got you at number 6. Time for the top 5 in that.